Hello, and welcome to another episode of the iWorkinSport live interview. This is the show where we talk to accomplished sport business professionals who come here to share their knowledge, their experience, tips, and advice in order to help you succeed in your career. If we're just meeting, my name is João Figueiredo, and I'm the founder of iWorkinSport, and I want to say a big thank you for being here with us today. If you're coming back, you know how this works. This is supposed to be an interactive session. So if you're just connecting now, you can leave your name, or actually let us know where you're watching from, right? And prepare your questions, right? And your comments to my guests today. So today, the episode is a little different. Instead of focusing on my guest's career journey, we will focus on a topic which is of great relevance, safeguarding in sport. So that's a term that we hear more and more. And today we will understand why, what it actually means, what is being done on that front. For that, I will welcome Daniela Negreda. She's an advisor and business strategist at a company called IGNITX. She's she has an interesting career in sports, almost by accident. I'll let her explain that. With many years at the IOC, and she is involved in a project called Building European Safe Sport Together, or BESST, or BEST, which is funded by the Erasmus Plus program, part of the European Commission. So, without further ado, let me invite Daniela to join me right after this. Hey, Dani, welcome. How are you?
Hello, how are you, João? Thanks for having me here.
Very well, very well. So we will speak English today. Daniela, like me, is a Brazilian, so that's not our conversational language normally. Um, so, Dani, as I explained, and as you know, probably this we usually focus very much on my guests about their career, their lessons, and so on and so forth. But today we will focus on this very important topic that we're going to discuss about safeguarding in sport. However, I will ask you to start by introducing yourself, letting us know how your journey in sport began until where you are at the moment. Can you make a summary to us, or give us a summary of that?
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, you hint a little bit already that it was a little bit by accident, but not that much. So I actually had a career in sports in my youth. I was a volleyball player at a high level performance, but in Brazil, you have to pick between playing or studying. I picked studying, and I had my career in marketing. I moved out of Brazil quite young to work for marketing at Kimberly-Clark Corporation. So I have a solid base from FMCG organization. And after 13 years with Kimberly-Clark, always in the area of marketing and trade marketing, I took a break, moved to Switzerland, and kind of by accident found a position with the International Olympic Committee, where they were actually looking for a senior marketing manager, which had a background in the corporate world. So it was one of those happy accidents. Of course, that having been an athlete before assisted a lot on the transition from the corporate world into the world of sports, but not 100% necessary. Because when we are talking about marketing, we are talking about a brand, a product to deliver it to people. So you can pretty much work in any industry. And I spent 7 years with the IOC. I was fortunate to work in 4 Olympic Games as well as 4 Youth Olympic Games. And then I took another break. I really recommend, since this is a career podcast, to always think about taking breaks. It's very important in people's careers. And when I got back from my break, I actually started consulting. So now I'm an independent. And one of my clients is IGNITX, which is an event management company. And within IGNITX, there are two focus streams. One is event management, which is an area that pretty much everybody that is watching us knows very well. But the other focus stream is safeguarding in sports. And that's how, again, I was introduced to this fascinating world and got more and more involved. So now it's been 4 years that I'm working with IGNITX and getting, deeper and deeper into the safeguarding industry.
Right. Yeah, you want to add something?
No, I was just gonna say, some of the things that I've done together with IGNITX on safeguarding, just so people have a bit of understanding.
Yeah, I was going to ask you exactly that, because that is the topic of the day. But I think, well, two things. I would like you to tell us what you did, I mean, in terms of work before in that space, safeguarding, but even before that, why is this topic so important? Maybe tell us that and say your credentials to talk about it.
Sure. So why safeguarding is so important? It is part of integrity. Integrity in sports is actually made up of 3 pillars. 2 very common, and I'm sure everybody that's watching us knows it. The first one is anti-doping. So clear as day, it falls under integrity, and people have a clear understanding on what it is. The second one has been more and more on the on the front of the discussion, which is match fixing. And this is really with the increase on the betting sites and the investment that betting sites are doing in the sport industry, match fixing has become a really important topic into integrity. And then the third pillar of integrity is safeguarding. And we can, in a little bit, talk about why it's important to discuss about it, but more than that, why it's not as discussed at. But let me tell a little bit about the credentials, right? It's like, why am I here talking about it? So with IGNITX, we've been working in many different projects. And just to name a couple of important one, IGNITX, we've done actually workshop for international federations. It was non-recognized as well as recognized federations not on the Olympic program. And this workshop was done for GAIS or GAIS, depending on the language that you speak, on behalf of the IOC. And it was a quite interesting and eye-opening opportunity for this workshop, because it was over a period of 2 weeks with these federations and being able to raise awareness, but more than that, guide a little bit on the areas that they could start the work in their federations, even with limited resources. So that was one of my first contacts, I should say, with safeguarding, and it was a lot of information coming my way. So that was fantastic. A more recent one actually was for Paris 2024. So one of IGNITX's partner, the French company's partner, they were the EDE for 5 Olympic venues, and one of their deliverables was security. So
sorry, what is EDE?
It's the model that Paris organizing committee actually set up. So instead of having the organizing committee responsible for the venues, they hire EDE, which is event delivery models, in each of the venues. So organizations would come in and they would act as the organizing committee and deliver into security, food and beverage, accreditation, and so on and so forth. So Spartner had 5 venues during Olympic Games that they were the EDE. And one of the functional areas was security. So they approached IGNITX, and we delivered a training for the security personnel. And it was understanding, the transgressive behavior, what is, that you need to know about it. So you can prevent, you can offer protection, but moreover was to do the liaison between what Paris had put in place for safeguarding and what this, the security personnel actually could do and should do. So how they should behave, and if there was an incident that they needed reported, who to report it, how to deal with the victim, right, and even with the potential people of interest around it. So it was a very rich project. And finally, the BEST, as you mentioned, Building European Safe Sport Together project. I've been working for 2 years in this project. And one of my main roles was really research. So it was understanding what is the market out there, doing questionnaires, surveys with national Olympic committees, national federations, and also a lot of interviews. So it was talking to people in organizations, as I mentioned, NOCs, NFs, and also event organizers. So it's been 2 years of intense research, diving into the world of safeguarding and what is happening in the world of sports in this type of organizations.
Very, very good, Dani. Very clear. Now, you mentioned before these 3 pillars of, say, integrity, right? You mentioned the not the betting. How you call that? The
fixing,
match fixing, anti-doping, and which we hear a lot about, and then safeguarding. If you're people that are already working sports, I think we notice that the term safeguarding appears more and more. I think organizations are paying more attention to that, but I think compared to the others, at least my impression is still, say, under. How would you say that?
Under discussed.
Not under discussed. Right, not mentioned that much. Is it just my impression, or is it the case? And if so, why?
It is the case, absolutely. There are many different reasons. Okay, I'll start saying safeguarding is a difficult word. Not every language has a translation for it. And if you are not an English speaker, it might not make too much sense as a word. And even if you are, an English speaker, it's a broad term that might bring a lot of different definitions, towards you. So it's kind of vague. The second part of it is that most people refer to the safeguarding as harassment and abuse. This is most likely the terms that you were used to hearing, correct?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So that's, you were like, oh, that's what we are talking about, harassment and abuse. Yes, but we also have to take into consideration that the term harassment and abuse, the first thing that comes to mind, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I say harassment and abuse, I imagine that the first thing that comes to your mind is sexual harassment.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So what happens is that as part of the BEST project, one of the things that we realize is that the terminology was not universal and not maybe modernized enough to where we live today for safeguarding. So with the
Right.
difficulties, right, that we saw language-wise, and even this the terms association, one of the big starting points of the BEST project was actually to create a universal and modernized definition for this area,
Right.
for this term. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
the approach taken was actually to be able to make it understandable. So if somebody is talking about it, you know what it is. And
Yeah.
the term that because the BEST project is done by 7 organizations as partners, and one of the
Right.
partners is the University of Windesheim in the Netherlands. So after a
Mm-hmm.
lot of literature review and compiling examples, looking into research with NOCs and Fs, the definition that the project is proposing is that we
Mm.
move into prevention and protection of transgressive behavior. So
Right.
moving away of just
So
one word.
is this the new definition that you and your group came up to?
Exactly. So this is how, instead of saying, okay, we are talking about safeguarding, we are actually talking about protection and prevention of transgressive behavior. And then we went beyond on the transgressive behavior alone to translate it. What do we mean by it? And one of the great things that we realize, and the definition brings, is that transgressive behavior is any form of misuse of a relationship of power that can actually harm an individual or individuals. And why it's broader in that sense is because now it includes things as discrimination, it includes defamation, neglect. Of course, you have the harassment and abuse in there as well, but it becomes broader. We are talking about any form of transgressive behavior, that it is physical, sexual, but also psychological. So it becomes,
Give us an example.
So for instance, on the psychological side, you might have verbal abuse as well as non-verbal abuse. So you might have an intimidation, which is a transgressive behavior, just by a body positioning that will make somebody feel afraid or not want to do something, or not feel as comfortable to be in the same space. So this would be a non-verbal psychological behavior that
Mm.
harms someone.
And when we're talking about that, and is your study, does it talk about abuse or transgressive behavior towards athletes? Is that athletes only? Is that towards coaches as well? What is that about?
So fantastic question, because if you notice on the definition, it is we say that it's any misuse of a relationship of power. So the first thing that comes to mind, going back to safeguarding, harassment and abuse, it's sexual. Oh, it's like the coach into the athlete, right? However, it's much bigger than that. When we say a relationship of power, we are talking about human nature, human relations. So let's think about a peer-to-peer. And we see studies that show that there is a lot more verbal abuse and physical violence abuse between peers than there are between a coach towards an athlete. So the definition, that of transgressive behavior go beyond athletes, go beyond children, okay, and the relationship between a coach and the athlete, but involves every single person that you have working in the sport industry. So it includes officials, it includes volunteers, staff, the whole entourage that you have. And
Does that
even
include fans?
Depending on how you propose your safeguarding, it does. So for Paris, for instance, it did include spectators. And one of the things, that you had on the training for the Paris Olympic Games for the security is if you have a spectator misbehaving and, for instance, shouting discriminatory slurs towards a player or even other spectators, what they should do, how they should behave. Because yes, that is transgressive behavior. It's not the norm. It's not acceptable in the world of sports. However, not every organization caters towards the detail of spectators, especially if you don't have an event. So if you get, for instance, an NOC, they might be creating, the overarching safeguarding of the people that are under their responsibilities. And then whenever there is an event, then the event goes and includes spectators under the covered persons.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It might be complicated to include the spectators in the receiving end of the abuse in that framework, but definitely I think as perpetrators of abuse sometimes, perpetrators of abuse, for sure. I mean, there's also some apps and things that are focused on that, or trying to solve that problem. I think we can talk about that a bit later. But actually, a lot of the abuse that athletes receive come from social media, normally, fake accounts, or where they don't have their real names, and they make racist comments or other types of comments. So I think there's a lot that comes from fans as well. I don't know if you can call fans, but from the general public.
Haters, maybe. But yeah, absolutely. And you touch a very important point. And one of the key findings is how much online abuse is growing. And going back to the relationship of power, in this case, there is the anonymity, and that's the power that people abuse. Right. So when we started talking about this definition, it's really a modern one, because include all those type of things. There during interviews, we heard a case of girls, I don't know, 12, 13-year-olds on a football team. And one of the players had actually, unfortunately, played 2 games on the same day. It wasn't, within the rules. So the team ended up being disqualified, and they missed out on the finals because of it. So the peers, the other girls, really started to attack this other girl on the internet. So they were not doing anything physically while they were at the club, but when they were, behind their screens, feeling protected, they started to attack this other girl. And that is absolutely, a case of prevention of transgressive behavior, because if the girls in the club had been trained and were aware of what they were doing, they would not have done it. And it actually caused a lot of trouble, because the family of the other athlete sued the club because they said, you failed to protect my daughter.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just to see how big safeguarding is becoming and how important it is. And, the example I gave is a grassroots club for female football. And you have to think, you have a gym, in the corner of your house that cater for 5-year-old gymnastics. That gym needs to have the safeguarding policies and procedures in place, so the parents can be, comfortable in leaving the 5-year-old there.
Right. Well, listen, so if it happens that much, is that common? Why is it that we don't hear that much about it?
Yeah, so there is what it's called a salient bias phenomenon, right? And it's quite...
Explain, please.
It's quite common. Imagine, let's put in here an iceberg. So you have the tip of iceberg, the part that it's outside the water, that's what you see. That's what you hear about. And those are normally the most mediatic cases. Normally, it's going to be about sexual abuse. And these are the cases that you hear to it. But everything that is happening below the surface, right, with your iceberg, it's not seen, it's not discussed. And it was quite interesting during our research to hear people that are in sports that are discussing safeguarding to tell us, oh no, this type of behavior do not happen in my country. Here in our country, people do not behave like that. Oh, it's a sport with not a lot of people. We are like a family. A family does not behave like that. But think about all the cases that you hear actually of real families, blood families, and all the cases of violence, the cases of abuse that are happening. So yes, they are happening, but if you actually look back, and I did this exercise, I look back at my volleyball career as a child and then as an adolescent, and I can pinpoint several different things today that were cases that should have been reported for transgressive behavior, all sorts of things, including sexual harassment and sexual abuse. However, at the time, I had no knowledge, call it naivete, call it, not knowing what's happening around it, not being discussed. So things just got out of the way, but also things that I might have known, but I didn't know what to do with it. Who should I talk to? If I see a figure on the hierarchy higher than me doing something that is inappropriate, nobody talking about it, maybe it is appropriate, right? So you start to question yourself. So this is why it's so important to have this discussion. You
Danny,
just froze. Are you there?
I think I'm going to remove here a bit. Listen, Danny, I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Wait. Wait. Okay, you're back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, you started to break a little bit. I didn't know if it was for me or for everybody else. But maybe the problem was here on my end. I hope that is solved. Can you just repeat maybe the last part of what you were just said?
Yeah, so I was just saying that at the time, I didn't know, I wasn't aware of some of the incidents. And even if I were aware, I didn't know who to talk to, where to go and take that information, what to do with it. And this is also part of this salient bias, because nobody else was talking about it. So you're not seeing it. And you pretend that you don't see it as well, and it becomes a norm. Right? And this is the reason why we are here. We have to talk about it. Transgressive behaviors come in all shapes and forms. It comes from all different directions. Giving an example, for instance, of parents that will yell at a coach because the coach has not put in the kid to play. That's I think everybody has lived through it. That's a transgressive behavior. It needs to be prevented. Right? Because you have to make sure that the person working there, in this case, the coach, is protected, right? And knows what to do about it, how to get the assistance that it's needed in order to stop.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's, and I don't know if there are different levels of transgressive behavior because we don't maybe give that much importance to that example that you mentioned, parents shouting at the coach, or even like fans, shouting at the coach or shouting at the referees. But we do pay more attention for if we're talking about a racist chants and that type of thing. And I know there's a aggravator there, the racism of being that, and but probably even when it's not a racist abuse, people should pay attention to that and the effects that those have. Although many football fans or other fans will say you go there and you're just gonna shout bad things to the other team or to the other coach, or sometimes to your own team if they're failing. They see that as part of the culture, even inherited in the sports culture. So it seems like you have that is a big task on your hand, or everybody involved in this project.
Absolutely. You hit the nerve. It's actually a multi-level challenge. Every single part of the sport industry needs to be involved into this cultural change. You need to have, the international level at this macro level, doing policies and procedures. So we are talking, for instance, the IOC, FIFA, making sure that they have their rules and policies, which they are doing. And that it cascade down, it gets into, for instance, continental level and then international level. You need to ensure that the National Olympic Committee is talking about sport ministries, all have that in place as well. And it continues, to get into, I mentioned the gyms, the studio, the fitness center, and all of those involved to put in place. And then it also goes into the micro level. We are talking about the athletes, the coaches, their involvement is also very important. It's creating awareness for them to be able also to be part of it, because every single person is part of the solution. If we are all aware with our surroundings, that makes it a lot easier for us to prevent. And this is what we want to go towards. We need to think about prevention. The more we prevent, the better it is, because the damage of one case, it's too big. And I'm talking, the damage that it does for the person affected, but the damage that it can do to the image of a club, the damage that it can do, to the image of a whole sport that can have. So it's really big. And another thing,
it is in every level of the organizations then.
Exactly. And one last thing about this is that it doesn't cost that much for the prevention, but it costs a lot after you have the problem. So solving the situation after it has occurred, the costs are really immense. So it's not only the damage that it does, but also financially how much it costs. So it's something also to consider. And it's this multi-level challenge, as I've mentioned, with all organizations and all participants to assist in a cultural change, right? As you've mentioned, it's okay for you to go and chant it. Well, actually, it's not, right? It's not okay for you to discriminate somebody that is on the field of play or somebody that is sitting right next to you, because that's not what you do outside of the stadium. So why it's okay in the stadium? And it's a cultural change that it's required, right? For to have an environment to practice sport that it's free of transgressive behavior.
Yeah, 100%. Danny, before we go to the next one, just to let you know, although people seem to be quite shy today, so, let us know where you're watching from, write your comments. There are already some here. I just want to pass to you, a few people that have left a message. So Steve, Jack say hi. We have Amanda Ramos watching from Paris. She already made a comment. So I'll bring that up in a second. There's Famida Faisa saying great conversation around sports integrity. Um, Safeguarding is definitely a key concern as the legislations are constantly changing around this area in Europe. There is on YouTube as well, Andrea McCrary is watching from Slovenia. Ilva Siemites from Sweden. There's another comment from Amanda here. Her name is not appearing, but just so when you read LinkedIn user, that's her. The problem is that there are no real quick solutions because there are relations and connections between people that work daily together. And that's why people close their eyes to the transgressive behavior from their loved colleague. It may be racism, sexual harassment, ageism, jealousy, moral harassment, etc. And then she complemented, agreeing with something that you are saying, that yes, it's happened even between the staff members organizing sport events. And in the meantime, Alenka also said hello from Slovenia. So just to give you a sense of who's participating. If you have questions to Daniela, please don't be shy.
Awesome.
Danny, so I think it's very linked to what we're doing. So how does this project, BEST, BESST, or BEST, assist in this call for culture, right? Or what is it bringing to the sports organizations? Let's talk about this project specifically.
Yeah, so beyond the definition that we've been discussing here that the BEST project is bringing, right? There are several different researches that have been made. So organizations wanting to understand how is the status of safeguarding implementation in countries in Europe. There is a lot of reports that are available on the BEST website, where you can really understand, who is implementing and what is being implemented, the levels and the details. So there is a couple of different resources that can be reached in this area. And some of the key findings from this body of work on the research that we identify, first and foremost, is really that safeguarding in Europe is still in its infancy stage. So we see few organizations actually doing an implementation from the prevention all the way into reporting, investigation, and adjudication or sanction. And those that have parts of it implemented are still saying that, you know what, we don't believe that we are as effective. And one of the reasons, I believe it was Amanda, I can remember the name of the person that made a comment, is the regulations are constantly changing. Exactly. What's happening is, let's think of anti-doping, which is under the same umbrella of integrity. Anti-doping is very clear. You know the rules. You know the substances that are approved, the ones that are not approved. You have all the definitions, of how the samples are going to be collected, how they are going to be tested. You have, the testing being done by reputable labs and so on. So it's easy for people to see and understand. When you go into the legislation that exists for safeguarding, many countries don't have anything yet about it. Not even at, as I said, a sport ministry level, let alone, going down into further and further closer to where the sport is practiced, right? So you see that there is this diversity, because if somebody has, there is no uniformity on what is being done. it's not the same sanction depending on what's perceived. So that also adds a lot, right, and aggravates the situation. So that was another finding. And something that came out, especially during the surveys and the interviews, is a call, right? People asking for forming an independent body, a call to action that really requires overarching, at a governing body, let's put it this way, that can look into it the same way that you have for match fixing, as well as you have for anti-doping. It doesn't exist yet. So these are quite key findings that we've had.
Yeah, that's quite interesting one. I think it might have answered already a comment or a question here from Famida Faiza. She says, I'm interested to know your opinion if you think a global entity on safeguarding is possible, like WADA framework on anti-doping. You just think answered that. You might want to complete or add to it. Earlier, FIFA has made efforts for the establishment of a safe sport entity, while the IOC continues to invest in building regional hubs and allocating resources. But despite all the efforts, there still remain a lack of a global framework.
Exactly.
Would you like to comment?
That's the key, lack of global framework. Okay. Because there is a cultural perception that comes in play. It's not as black as and white as it is with doping, right? In some cultures, people might think that it's okay for a coach to yell with towards the kids, right? In other cultures,
some coaches they slap them even.
Exactly. I wasn't even going to touch, the physical violence. But yeah, exactly. Some coaches will do those kind of things, and that's not okay. And it's like, how do we find a midterm that would fit all the cultures? And having a body that regulates that, as it was suggested, that's what we've heard from NOCs, NFs, and event organizers saying, for us, life would be easier if everybody knows what we are saying. You get an event like the Olympic Games. There are 206 nations represented. Each person has a different a cultural background. What might be acceptable, let's say, catcalls in some cultures are not accepted in others, are offensive, are transgressive behaviors. So educating people towards a middle ground will probably assist. And that's exactly one of the findings that we had that has been mentioned in your question. So yeah.
Yeah. Listen, Fahmida seems to be an expert in the field as well, or at least she's super interested in it. She also comments, thanks for the participation, by the way. Actually, the safeguarding culture is constantly evolving and growing alongside national commitments. I'm going to say COE's Start to Talk, or COE's Start to Talk initiative alongside IPACS or IPACS has taken some substantive actions to advance safeguarding policies in Europe and at the government level. Are you familiar with the acronyms?
Not those acronyms specifically, but the whole idea of this project actually being commissioned, right, by Erasmus Plus as part of the European Commission is to try to find frameworks, legal frameworks for institutions. Now, it's very difficult for you to be able to write a legal document that fits every single organization, especially when you were talking about overarching organizations such as NOCs and NFs. However, when you talk about events, event organizers, that is easier because a format of an event is going to be pretty much similar. You might have more athletes, less athletes. You might be multi-sport, but in a way, it's going to happen in a location with people physically joining it. So for the BEST project, following, the key findings, and we have a couple of them that we will touch base afterwards because they are quite important to mention. But following the research, that was the next step, was to ensure that we had tools ready to use for organizations and different types of organizations. So if we talk about frameworks, operational as well as legal frameworks, NOCs and NFs have a specific document, which is a very robust document with content in different areas. Okay, so we'll have, for instance, code of ethics and conducts. It will talk about policies and strategies. It has reporting, investigation, of a concern, disciplinary proceedings. So these different areas that have to be addressed, and they can even at NOCs and NFs or overarching organizations be dealt in phases. So you can start at a beginner level, and it tells you a little bit of what you should have if you are starting, right? And then if you continue on your journey in implementing safeguarding, here are other initiatives that the Project BEST is telling you that you should have, to be in an intermediate level. And if you are further advanced, those are the initiatives required, for you to have a complete set of policies and procedures in place implemented that will reach, as we said, the prevention and the protection. So this is, something done specifically for NOCs and NFs. There is another group, very important.
Maybe, sorry, Danny, because you already mentioned that acronym twice, just for people watching, if they are not familiar with. The NOCs are the National Olympic Committees, and NFs are the national federations. So please continue.
Yes, sorry about that. And I mean kind of overarching organizations, okay? We just named National Olympic Committees and national federations. Then you have to think of the event organizers. So as I've mentioned, for event organizers, because an event is something physical, and we kind of know the format that it takes place, there is a lot of templates available, including a legal policy that event organizers can go on the BEST website, which I believe you will share soon the QR code, right, for people to be able to click and look into the documents that I'm referring, right, in a bit.
Yeah, sure. Let me actually put that on the screen. And if they're watching on their phone, for instance, so they can't capture that QR code, there's also a link in the description of the video, the link to go to the BEST site.
Yeah,
I'll leave that for a bit.
Yeah. So in there, you will be able to see the framework. So the first one that I've mentioned for the National Olympic Committees and the national federations, then event organizers, we go beyond on what we are providing with actual templates where people can come in, copy, for instance, the whole policy and just make adjustments, right? If they want, as we discussed, to include spectators, they include the spectators, but otherwise, this is the minimum covered persons that we are recommending, and putting the definitions, in place, and guiding them towards having a safeguarding officer, which is for this group watching, on your podcast about careers. It's something very important. We can talk about it in a bit, right? About this role, just so I finish the different frameworks that are available. So for events,
I will ask you that, but before we talk about the roles specific for people that have an interest in working with that, there is also a question here from Alenka Hiti that I want to ask you, but you can finish if you just want to finish something before we go to her question. And
Yeah,
then I'll ask you about the roles.
so let me quick finish. I talked about the first framework, the second one for event organizers, and then there's a third one that it's for clubs, gyms, studios, which is a simplified version and give guidance on small steps, the minimum things that every single organization that deals with sport should have. So these are legal frameworks that we have available, is one of the deliverables that we have from the BEST project. It's already on the website for all organizations to download for free. There are checklists, there are references, there are guidance, there are, as I said, templates, like legal templates, just copying and pasting and being able to kickstart the development of safeguarding. Or if you already have something, do a self-assessment. How could you improve on it?
That's great. That's great. Since we were explaining a few acronyms before, Hamida explained the ones that she mentioned. COE, Council of Europe, I was going to guess that one, but didn't want to guess. The IPACS, I had no idea whatsoever. So that's the International Partnership Against Corruption in Sports. Thank you, Fahmida. And by the way, why are you so knowledgeable about that? Tell us in the comments. I would love to know a bit more about where that knowledge come from. Uh, if I can actually go to Alenka's question. Daniela, what tangible benefits can sports organizations, especially the grassroots level, gain from the BEST project, considering that safeguarding regulations and resources are often less, oh, it's less organ. Do you want to guess what you finished? I didn't read it all before
Yeah.
putting that up.
Do you
But
mind?
the first let's answer the first one.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So,
what tangible benefits can sports get from the projects?
so the benefits are for every single person involved, right? People will look and say, "Oh my God, this is just additional work, on somebody's plate," but actually, it's not, because when people are actually protected, right, and there is a prevention against transgressive behavior, they perform better. So when we talk about athletes, if they don't have to worry about, for instance, psychological abuse, they will perform better. Coaches are not worried, about the pressure that it's coming. For instance, it's all about winning. They will perform better. So there is this type of thing that it's human nature. If you are not in a comfortable position, you are not going to perform and do your job well. It's that simple. And this is the reason that why we believe it's so important to have from grassroots, as it was asked in here, all the way into elite sport, all the way into the overarching, because it can improve not only the performance, of course, on the sport performance, but also the people involved in it. There's going to be better retention of employees. You will be a more attractive event if people, for instance, are not at the stadium saying bad words
Yeah,
or discriminating athletes.
right. Right. And what Alenka mentioned, I don't know if you saw, she was just saying that considering that safeguarding regulations and resources are often less organized. So the word that was cut was organized.
Organized,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And this is a great point that she brings in. And one of the key findings that we have is that today the organizations don't have formal structure, right? Which will lead directly into the next point of discussion that you will bring up, which is the resources. Because today it's an area that, because it's not discussed, organizations are not perceiving the need. But as it grows and investment grows, we see European Commission investing in it. We see the IOC making huge investments. We see FIFA, we see UEFA. So it's going to happen. And it is a career opportunity. Today, there's, the findings show not to have structured departments in place, and also there is no training. So it's an opportunity to get the right people with the right skill set and enter into the sport industry. You know very well how difficult sometimes it is to penetrate the sport industry. And if you have this differential, this will be an area that will grow. Maybe you are today in a position, let's say you got in as an intern or a coordinator, but if you can sell in projects or safeguarding internally, you might even be able to grow your career within the organization that you want by developing this area. Or if you are a professional and you are outside, getting ready, preparing yourself, doing courses, then there will be more and more places for people to work. One finding that we have is that there is an increase trend of the presence of a safeguarding officer or a welfare officer in events. But it's this
Are
role.
these the more common roles that you see in that space for people that have interest to work with that, with integrity or safeguarding?
Yeah,
Those are the roles that you find more often.
Those are the roles that you find more often. And today, sometimes people are appointed to that because they had some free workload, or because they could speak many languages, because sometimes you need to have the linguistic capability. And this is where we really hope to be able to assist, and where BEST 2.0 is coming in 2025, exactly to address training, qualifications, ensuring that you have the right people in place. Because one thing is to have a safeguarding officer at an event. Another thing is that safeguarding officer is the person that is doing the whole implementation of safeguarding. It is understanding, the process from A to Z. It's not just a figure to go to during the event, but it's taking care of the planning and, of course, prevention, looking at the risk assessment of events, for example.
Right. And for those so interested in those type of roles, what's a job description would look like, Danny?
So first thing, let's talk about fields, okay, that require a little bit of expertise. So people that has some knowledge of social work, legal expertise, some investigation, but also victim support will be highlighted from the pack, okay, because this definitely will bring some additional qualifications that you can have. Of course, that you also need to have very, very good communication skills, in the sense of not only being clear communication, but compassionate, right? I mean, this empathy as a soft skill is extremely important in these roles, because you have to understand what's happening before it's happening. And then when it's happened, you need to be able to address those people in the best way possible. So those are some characteristics of skills, both hard skills as well as soft skills, that people should be developing, cultivating. There are courses out there for both soft and hard skills to be done. Some of them are free, some others are paid, some others are by indication only, but it's an area that it's growing and there is availability for it. So it's, new area, like everything else. Those that get ready before have a bigger chance of growing within the career faster than those that are, late adopters.
Very, very nice. Do you have any sort of to recommend that maybe if not now, I can maybe add in text in the description to people links? I think that would be quite useful.
Yeah, there is an organization called Safe Sports International. They do offer both free as well as paid courses. There are many courses in different languages. So, for the Brazilians watching, the COBE, so the Brazilian National Olympic Committee, offers free courses, and even for different levels, quite interesting, very complete one for you to understand where it's coming from. One of the speakers is Joana Maranhão, who is, a survivor. She does an amazing job in really explaining things. So there are many courses out there. The IOC offers a certification, a safeguarding officer certification, but at the moment, this is by indication only. I don't believe it's completely open. If somebody that is participating has a little bit more of information, please do share. We are always, trying to get more information. So please share with us if you also are aware of more options.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. Listen, we just hit actually the hour mark a minute ago, so we're going to start to wrap up. But before we go, I wanted to comment with you. We talked about tools as well to implement initiatives. And I don't know if you're familiar with one. I welcomed here in the show, I don't know if it was still this year or earlier, Gilberto Silva, Brazilian former football player, big hero at Arsenal, world champion with Brazil. And he's started this initiative, this company or tool called Striver with a few other partners. And I think the idea was exactly that: is social media, because a lot of the abuse happens online, right? As we mentioned before, behind bots, behind fake names, behind all those protections that the haters have. So they created this social media where you can interact with athletes, with the fans and their favorite athletes and heroes, but it would also prevent anyone to abuse them. So it's called Striver. I think there are maybe all other similar initiatives as well. Are you aware of any of those? Are there other things that might have come across your research?
Yeah, so I actually took a look at a Striver. It's not big yet, but it's definitely trying to use AI to protect, especially players with the comments. So blocking before they arrive. One of the findings that we have is how much it's growing, right? The online abuse. There is a company that partners with IGNITX in some of the initiatives. They're really big in safeguarding. It's called Signify. They are a UK-based organization, and they work with pretty much all the big events of sport. So I'm actually going to ask you this one. What do you think was the peak of online abuse during the Qatar World Cup of men? Who do you think was the biggest player attacked? Because there was attack, online. And why? Would you know that?
Well, I have to think about the World Cup specifically, because when you started talking about it, first thing that came to mind was the Olympics. I remember that Australian break dancer that received a lot of abuse. Obviously, the Algerian boxer as well. But in football, when it comes to football, abuse towards player, first name that comes to mind is Vinicius Junior, because I think he's one that has been very more vocal about it because of racism. And then I would guess other big stars, whether it's Neymar, whether it's Mbappe, because he made the final against. Apparently, everybody wanted Messi to win.
Ding, 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 ding. You got it. So Mbappe was the highest abused, and there was one specific action of him that actually broke the internet, let's call it this way, with the number of harassment and abuse. What would you guess?
I don't know.
So it was when France actually defeated Morocco. So Morocco, got eliminated, and
So it had nothing to do with the final.
no, nothing to do with the final. And actually, Mbappe went to console Hakim, which was his friend. Of course, they played together.
Teammates, yeah.
Teammates, exactly. And the hate that brought in, the type of, there were life-threatening messages posted online, and Signify monitors, they work with the platforms to ensure that they are taken down, and they even go further into looking into it if the organizer wants, and taking it to law enforcement. And they've had cases with the Rugby World Cup where there was a life threat made, and actually they investigated, and the person, they found out the account and were able to prosecute the perpetrator. So online is, becoming quite huge and a problem. So, there are a couple of organizations working into it, trying, as you've mentioned, Striver, trying to bring it, trying to take it down before. In the case of Signify, they are working with organizers to prevent athletes and also officials, especially with the match fixing and betting problem, not match fixing, with the betting problem. Officials are really exposed to transgressive behavior online. And João, I just want to say one last thing here, because there is one more part of the BEST project that it's a little bit linked to what we were saying of the getting more acquainted with the topic. It's not a course, let's put it this way, but as part of the BEST, we also have tools for communication and education. So there is awareness, campaigns that if your organization is interested in the topic and would join forces with us, there's materials in there, and also materials for education to understand what we are talking about, safeguarding, what we are talking about transgressive behavior, breaking some of the myths that are out there, and trying to spread the word. So everybody has the same level of understanding, at least the basic level. So in this multi-level challenge that we have, we can join forces and make sure that we are building, a European safe sport all together.
Very good, very good. Dani, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Super important topic. I was obviously not very much aware of that, so I learned a lot from you. I am sure that other people did as well. I learned from you and from the audience as well, especially Fahmida, but everybody that commented. Actually, she mentioned something else here. She says that because I asked her, she seemed very knowledgeable. So she says that I actually had the privilege to pioneer in safeguarding 7 countries in South Asia through her professional career as former head of safeguarding and social responsibility at the South Asian Football Federation. And she's also a FIFA Guardians graduate from the first cohort, where she was invited to share the case study as the best practice that she contributed to. She actually wrote a bit more than that, but it cut off, so I couldn't read more. But Fahmida, well done. Kudos to you too. Keep doing the good work. Let's connect on LinkedIn as well. I don't know if we're already connected, but maybe we can chat. And that was great. Bastian Gruger saying great insights. Thank you for sharing. Thanks to everybody that was here with us, and a big thank you to you, Dani, to doing that and sharing this important topic with us.
Thank you so much, João, for the opportunity. And yes, this area, we are all learning from each other. So reach out to me, and I'll definitely connect you with the rest of the team, and we'll keep learning. And again, together is how we are going to be able to prevent and protect transgressive behavior in the world of sports. Thank you.
That's great. Danny, stay there. I'm just going to finish the stream and we'll talk in a second. Bye-bye, everyone. Hope to see you all soon. Thanks for participating. Ciao, ciao.